He does this all so slick. We didn't see any of this stuff normally.
Imagine leaving it in our hands.
I remember the old days when I used to do question time, and they used to always say at the end, "Sit still," just to make sure the program's recorded. And you think, "Are you kidding? You absolutely kidding?"
You're right there, Colin. Are you frozen? Is the whole thing frozen?
I can't see the Zoom. Use is that in now? Right, I'm going to start recording. Is it on there, Johnny?
It says that we're streaming to YouTube.
Right. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to Long Bangers. I'm your host tonight. My name is Colin, and you might see on screen it's not Colin, but it is Colin. So, hello. And with me, I've got John, who's going to say his
Me.
name.
Oh,
Does I
sorry.
say that? Yes. And we've also I've got a guest tonight, and it's Ian Blackford, former MP and MSP. You've been an MSP,
No,
and
no, no. I've only
you've
been an
not.
MP. I was an MP between 2015 and 2024 for Roscommon Cabinet. Now I'm retired from all of that, and delighted to be on with your good selves tonight to talk about all things Hibernian.
Yeah, we're going to try and keep it to Hibs. We might. We're not going. It's not exactly going to be a news night interview. We'll probably just go mainly Hibs, but we will have questions in from the listeners as well as we go. So we'll see what comes, and we'll do our best with it. But thanks for coming on. Did any of you see the women's game today? I was going to start with that. The women's derby
What
this afternoon.
you really want to talk about that? I'm trying to forget it.
I know it was pretty bad. It was first half they were okay, but second half, oof, it wasn't great. So they lost 3-1, John. If you've not seen it, they were
I
one
saw
0
the
up at
score.
half time. 1-0 up at half time. I might get a nice wee win here, but I think I'm a jinx every time I go to a women's derby, which I've been to quite a few. We've seen to lose it. The ones I don't go to is the ones we win. So I think it's maybe me lent my. It was a decent crowd for 4,000 something there in the West Stand. Just a. Did you see it, Ian, or did you just see the result?
I watched it on BBC Alapa. So
Yeah,
I think they said, I mean, they announced the crowd. I think they said 4,700. So it was
was
a
it as much?
decent crowd there. I mean, the
Yeah,
women's team had done well and winning the league last year. But listen, one thing we all hate: if it's the men's teams, the women's teams, the youth team, doesn't matter. You didn't lose to the Hearts.
well, I've said it before actually on here. Like if that was 1-0 up at half time in a men's derby, and you come out and start at the second half, like, we would be absolutely hammering them on here
Yeah,
Sunday night for that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
aye. Anyway, I don't know. We need to encourage more people to go rather than put them off by talking them down like that. I think so. Um, anyway, Ian, let's talk about you. So, recently retired.
Yep.
Um, and are you living up north? Because you're originally from Edinburgh.
Yeah, I'm
Is
originally
that?
from Edinburgh. I'm in. Use a football word. I'm in transition just now, so I've got a flat in Glasgow, but I'm spending a bit of time in Cardiff. But I'll end up back in Scotland full time. So I'm glad to say, having been a season ticket holder for a long time, Colin. When I was in Parliament, I had to give it up. I couldn't get there. I had my constituency responsibilities, but at least I'm back at the holy ground. I'm back with a season ticket again. So delighted to be there.
We
Is
told our
ever
subscribers. Sorry, John, you carry on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask you, just as you were talking about having given up your season ticket holder because of other commitments, were you ever sat during like an important vote or debate going on in the House of Commons and you're maybe looking at your phone to see what the Hibs score was?
Well, yeah, I've done all of that, but it's funny that you should say that, John, because I think I've never actually checked, but I think if you look at the parliamentary record, it's called Hansard. I don't know how many times I mentioned the Hibs in 9 years. It was a lot. Any excuse that I had, and I do remember that one of my MPs, Patricia Gibson, she once said to me, she looked at me and she said, "Why is it always about the Hibs?" And I said, "Because it is. It just is." But and Prime Minister's Questions Day, John, there was a big guy used to sit beside me, one of my pals, Big Chris Law. Um, to my shame, he's a jambo, and he used to wear a maroon tie for Wednesdays for Prime Minister's Questions. So I'd come and sit down and I'd shake my head and I'd say, "Take that off." I'll not say what I said to him. It was a wee bit stronger than take it off. And he said, "I'm just trying to get you in a mood." I says, "Ah, you've got me in a mood." so So there was, and I'll tell you one wee funny thing though. I did actually appear on Only Excuse at Christmas time, New Year time, 1 year, and it was a sketch in the House of Commons, and there I was standing, and Tony Roper, I'll never forgive him for this, actually had a maroon pocket handkerchief in my jacket. So I thought, yeah, cheeky. I'll not say what I was going to say because that really didn't please me at all. But no, I managed to mention the Hibs quite a few times in Parliament, and the other thing I used to do used to be in Sunday politics quite a lot, and the guy who did the interviews more latterly was Martin Geisler, another well-known Hearts fan. So the number of times I used to wind them up by having my Hibs tie on
You'll
in the
miss
studio.
that, Ian. Sunday morning interview, getting a grilling off a jambo.
Well, indeed, it was part and parcel of what it was, Matty. To be honest, Matty, Colin, sorry.
I didn't get that wrong. Honestly, the viewers will know. There's already comments on YouTube.
I know,
I've seen that. But
I mean, you had to be on duty really 24/7. I'll tell you another thing since we got into this, because when COVID started, I had an office. I was living in the Sky. And for the first time, I was doing interviews from home. We were doing parliamentary stuff. And my chief of staff said to me, "You better tidy that office up. I mean, there's papers everywhere, there's bottles of wine, I mean, you name it." So I got rid of all that stuff. And I can't remember if it was a TV interview, if it was live in Parliament. But she phoned me right after it. She said, "You got rid of all that stuff." She says, "Well, where did all that Hibs stuff come from?" I said, "Well, it was always there, but you didn't see it because it was hidden behind so many other things." So there was 2 Hibs balls and lots of pictures and all the rest of it. So
I've seen it. It always used to get posted on like Hibs.net message boards and stuff. Yeah, you're in Blackford talking about Hibs in the Parliament again and stuff like that.
yeah, indeed.
So anyway, so you're originally from Edinburgh. Presumably that's how you're a Hibs fan. Is that from birth sort of thing, or?
Yeah, it is. There is. Listen, Colin. There's a song that we all know. When I was 5, my daddy took me down to Easter Road, and that was it. I was taken to Easter Road in 1966 when I was 5 years old, and I think the first game I went to was Hibs Dundee, which I checked back the record. That game was a 1-1 draw. Alan Cousins scored for Hibs that day. My dad said to me later on, I mean, I grew up in Muirhouse, and my dad said to me that he wanted to take me to Easter Road because he didn't want anybody taking me to Tynecastle. And that was it. I was hooked. And I've got some of my memories of that time. And I mean, he would take me to midweek games, the evening games at Easter Road. And I wasn't very big. I was a wee guy. And the only way you could see was sitting on the wall, as many people would do halfway up the terracing. But the excitement of Wednesday night games, the lights, the colour, the players coming out, the noise, and everything else. It's something that really sticks with you, Colin. I'll never go away from me. And it was a special stadium back in the day. I'm pleased with the stadium we've got now, but that stadium then was quite something. The whole scale of the whole thing.
Yeah, the huge terrace and stuff with the east.
Yeah. You're too young to remember that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm only a young thing. But no, I'm definitely too young for that.
Yeah.
Was your dad a Hibbie, Ian?
Yeah,
or did he just have a real dislike for anyone taking you to Tynecastle?
No, my dad was a Hibs fan. He grew up as a Hibs fan. I don't know. I suppose, like a lot of families in Edinburgh at the time, they were split. So he had 2 brothers that were Hibs fans and 2 brothers that were Hearts fans. His dad was actually from the northeast. He was from Buckie. His mum's family were Irish immigrants into Edinburgh, I guess, like a lot of Hibs fans. So, and he was lucky enough to see the famous 5. So no, he took me every week until I was old enough to go on my own. But again, he was like a lot of people. I remember when Hibs sold Pat Stanton to Celtic, he was heartbroken. So he never went to Easter Road for quite a long few years after that. I mean, he latterly went back and he latterly had a season ticket. In fact, when I was away from Edinburgh, my dad's passed away now, but my dad actually used to have a season ticket with my son. So at least I'm able to say there's a long family tradition, John. And the family name actually back in time when they came over from Ireland were McCabe's, and there's been certainly in the early years there was a long history of McCabe's being involved with Hibs.
It's back in those days. It was easy back in those days to go a lot of people used to rotate, didn't they? The grounds, or they say they did. Like
Yeah, yeah, they did, and that's interesting in itself. And I actually, but one of my uncles that's a Hearts fan, I kind of speak to him every week, and we wind each other up. It's quite good fun. But I actually remember going with all my uncles to the 7-0 game in 1973, because in those days, Colin, there was no segregation, and I can actually remember quite clearly that we were all in the enclosure. Why did Landman on me with the abuse I was giving him? Is the goals were rattling is another story, but there we are.
times, imagine, you just can't imagine doing that now.
I know, and
Yeah.
actually, like there's obviously very good reasons. I mean, the trouble that emerged in the 1970s, but I actually still think there's something wrong about not being able to go to football with your pals. And actually, I remember in the early 1980s, Hibs were playing St Johnstone up at the Old Muirton, and I had a pal of mine that was an SNP councillor, my age, a young guy. And we'd agreed that we'd stand in the Hibs end for the first half, and we'd go into the St Johnstone end for the second half. And of course, I had my Hibs scarf on. And lo and behold, the policeman wanted to chuck me out. And he was actually on the police committee. And he says, oh, wait a minute. He says, what's the harm in this? It's two pals that are watching the game together. And I think that's quite sad, Colin, really.
I mean, I'm a rugby fan as well, so
Yeah,
I quite like the difference though. Like I like going to the rugby and it being mixed, but I like going to the football and having that more tribal
yeah,
element.
yeah.
So you
No,
get the best of both if you do both sports, I think.
I know, and it's probably a subject we could discuss for hours, but I mean, I wouldn't, folk have got to behave in a certain way, but you're right. But people, it's never a problem at rugby.
Hmm.
It's never a problem at rugby, but it's sad that you can't go with your pals. Yeah, you want to shout for your team and support your team and all the rest of it. But anyway, look, probably for another day.
Yeah, well, actually,
Yeah.
can I just ask one wee question? Just on that topic, what do you think is missing from football, or sorry, what do you think football is lost by not being able to change ends and stand with your mate that's got a different strip on?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I kind of, you just reminded me about what that used to be like at half time, John. And I mean, I remember back in the 70s when I went, and I actually helped run a Hibs supporters club when I was a laddie, funnily enough, Capital Hibs supporters club. And I mean, I remember in those days, Hibs had an enormous away support. And we used to take great pride in take what we used to call taking the other ends. But I mean, there was never any, in most of the clubs, there was never any rancor or animosity. I mean, there might be a few words when you changed at half time, but it usually worked quite well. It's different when you were playing Hearts and Rangers and Celtic. I suppose that's where the trouble mainly came. But I miss I suppose, some of the atmosphere of that. And I suppose, for all of us, it's become a wee bit sanitized, hasn't it? It's become quite corporate. It's not the game for the working man than it was perhaps in the past. So there's a sadness about some of that, I suspect.
Before we get into, I do want to ask you about all the Hibs stuff, right? But where were
Mhm.
you like when Ron Gordon came in? He was quite, on the match day, all the match day atmosphere and all that, and he
Yeah,
wanted to get like
yeah,
alcohol back into the
yeah,
ground and all that. And
yeah,
obviously there was it's not happening. Like was the kind of um, the line that came back, other than the corporate, obviously, because it's okay for the non-working man, I suppose it's in the corporate.
that's
But
right.
where did you sort of stand on that, like the beer in the concourse, sort of?
Oh, listen, I think he was a breath of fresh air, and I think everything that's happened under the Gordons, I think they've been great. And maybe I think it's probably fair to say, Colin, that a lot of people would have been nervous about overseas owners, American owners coming in. I mean, I've met the family on a couple of occasions. I was at Ron's memorial service, and my God, they get the Hibs, don't they?
Mm.
And I think they've. I mean, we can see that with what's happened over the last few days about buying back the Black Knight stake and so on. They have put so much money into the club, and they want the club to be a success. And I mean, I've got nothing but good words to express about what they've done for this club, how they feel about it, the relationship they've got with the fans. Um, they're absolutely tremendous, and I think the vision that they had. I have to say, I mean, I'm not against the corporate stuff. I've participated in it as well, but it's a different experience from the period that I grew up in. That's not to say it's good or bad. It's just different. But it brings money in, and we need the money. We want Hibs to be successful. We want Hibs to have enough of a playing budget as it possibly can. I don't want the Gordons to continue to put their hands in their pockets. We've got to be sustainable. So no, I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But I still want it to be a club that's rooted in the community, and I think the club get that, and obviously the community foundation as well. So, but we lose all of that at its peril, and I suppose when I think about all the things that have changed over a long period of time, and we fought a campaign to keep the club at Easter Road and not to move to Straighton, thank God that was a battle that we won. Because it is, Hibs are a community club. It's rooted in the community. We are the community. So thank goodness that's there, and thank goodness that the owners, the custodians, they all recognise that.
I didn't realise until recently when we spoke to David Duff that there was a Straighten version 1 and a version 2.0. And I think sometimes I'm only out in Livingston, and there are occasions, I think especially around this time of year, when it's pissing down or it's freezing cold, and I think, Christ, I've got to get the train, I've got to walk all the way down. It's really not that far.
Yeah.
It's like 25 minutes or whatever. And then I think of the alternative that you're suggesting, like going out to, well, where Costco and IKEA, etc. are now, and I think that would have been torture.
It would have been, it would have, I think it would have ripped the heart out of the club. I mean, I talked about St Johnstone being a mutant park, but what a soulless place they are now. And I was actually part of the fans group that opposed the merger. Some people might remember that it was called the Fans Against Removal from Easter Road, the farmer group as it was called, which didn't go down too well with some people at the time. But thank goodness we were successful and we retained that. But you raise an important thing there as well, John, because people associate Straighton with Farmer and Petrie, and that's true to a large extent. But these were the plans that David Duff had before that too. There's a kind of wider issue, I suppose, in terms of what happened at that land. That's another story, and I know it's kind of touched on in the book, and I know it's something that Simon Pierce talked about. How on earth did Tom Farmer get that land? Because it was what was alleged by a number of people that Hibs had at least had the option on that land at Straighton at the time. So a lot of money was made from developing that land on the back of all of that. And moving Hibs was really an integral part of that whole campaign. But we can celebrate and rejoice that it didn't work, and we've stayed in Easter Road.
Yep.
Again, I'm just going to go to the Hibs stuff. I'll do that. I was just a complete politician. What do you think about drink at the concourse, right? And you never answered it. So although you're a retired politician, you never answered.
Well, actually, I saw the other day that I think Aberdeen have been allowed to introduce this. I don't know if it's
St Johnstone.
Yeah, is it St Johnstone? Yeah. So absolutely, why not? Why shouldn't clubs be able to do this? And I think it's something we need to come back and look at again.
It's getting the ground earlier and stuff, doesn't it? I think or it could.
Yeah.
Always it frustrates me. I don't know why it frustrates me, but I can Easter Road, and I usually get down fairly early.
Mm-hmm.
Not as early as you would normally be there, but you get in and you look around and you go, "There's nothing there." It's 5 to 3, and then everybody just sort of piles in at the end.
But I mean, look, you go to Easter Road because you want to see the Hibs, but you want to make it an experience, don't you? And if you're able to have a drink in the stadium before the game, why not? Why not? I mean, people are going to be drinking elsewhere anyway, but get them into the ground, make them part of the whole thing. I mean, you do things to make it entertaining for people as well. No, I'm all for that.
Can I sorry, just on that point, what sort of entertainment would you like to see in the concourse before the game while you're having a drink?
You're a bad man. It's not for me to say that. I mean, obviously you get the fan zones at the international games, don't you? I mean, they have it at Hampden before the Scotland games, so whether you have music or something, I don't know. But I mean, better people than me can come up with exactly what you would do to make it work.
Yeah, there must be something. Anyway, let's go on. And so, I've supported since a boy. What's your memories for growing up? Favorite players, favorite teams, favorite games?
Well, as a young boy in the late '60s, we had some brilliant players that came and went. I mean, I was lucky enough to see the likes of Maranello and Peter Cormack. I don't remember some of the players that were there under Steen, that great team in '64, '65. They probably should have won the league if Steen hadn't walked out on us in the way that he did. But the Bob Shankly team, which was really the first one I saw, my goodness, they absolutely entertained. And I mean, I do remember being heartbroken when Colin Steen was sold to Rangers. But of course, who was his replacement? Joe McBride probably scored a hat trick in a European game. But one of my binding memories, Colin, was I think it was 1970. Hibs against Celtic at Easter Road, 44,000 people packed. And oddly enough, I couldn't get, for whatever reason, I couldn't get my usual place in the wall halfway up. So my dad took me to what became the back of the seated enclosure. And there was a wooden fence at the back of that seated enclosure, and I was perched on that. And that was a world-class Celtic side in 1970. They were in the European Cup final that year, of course. And Hibs were just unbelievable down the slope in the second half. And McBride scored 2 goals, and we beat Celtic 2-0. So I mean, I was only probably 9-year-old, but I don't know why that game sticks in my memory. And then I suppose you kind of roll on to the time of Turnbull's Tornadoes, and as a young teenager at school, and the team that's imprinted on the memory of so many people. We could all name the team: Herriot, Brownlee, Shadler, Stanton, Blackley, Edwards, Gordon, Crockley, and Duncan. Do you know who the sub was? There's a
No.
quiz. You don't know. You don't know. Neither of you. Well, actually, it would normally either be Hazel or Hamilton would have been the sub. But anyway, what a team! What a team! I don't think there was a weak link in that team. And of course, we came up against what was still a very good Celtic side. We won the League Cup twice. Won the League Cup once, won the Driver Cup twice. I think Turnbull famously kind of lost patience with him when we lost in the quarter-final of the Cup Winners' Cup. But I think as a young boy, you never realised that you were seeing something that was truly, truly special. Truly, truly special.
It's funny you say that, actually. I was chatting to a friend about this recently, and this is one of the things that I think has maybe been lost from supporting a football team and the players that play for your football team. So I was talking to a friend about John McGinn and saying, like, we got to see him in the flesh at Easter Road doing his thing before he has become, the superstar playing in the Premiership that he is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, though, and I don't know. Like, I don't know whether it's been lost because of. I don't know whether it's been lost because of like as time moved on from, say, when you were talking about changing ends at halftime, like seeing your friends, etc. Like, it's become. I don't know if it's symptomatic of that kind of commercialisation of football.
No, it is, because I mean the expression that we used at Hibs, of course, was "see you behind the goals," and I mean that was the whole point. You met your mates, but that connection that you had with the club and the team, and I mean, you think now about how many players would be signed every close season and what was signed in January. But back in those days, you'd be signing 1, 2, 3 players, at the end of the season, and so the players were there for a long time, and you had an affinity with them. And when I mentioned that I grew up in Muirhouse, but when I was 8, 9, we moved to Carricknow. And right round the corner in different directions from me, I had Gordon Marshall, who was then the Hibs keeper, and Jimmy O'Rourke. And as a precocious 9-year-old, I used to go and chap on Jimmy's door. And he would, honestly, I kid you not, and he would bring me in and pour me a cup of juice and would sit and talk about the Hibs. And they were your heroes. My first Hibs strip had a number 8 on the back. That was Jimmy's number. He was my hero. But I mean, when you're talking about McGinn was at Hibs for a few years. I mean, he's a cult hero. But I think the trouble these days is players come and go. I think youngsters, they haven't got that opportunity to develop that link. Maybe we've got it today with the likes of Bashiri. Bashiri's a cult figure, but these players that you could expect to see year after year and really get to know them, and when you thought you got to know them with your personality, you don't really, but people that had an affinity to Hibs. And one of the things actually I really notice when you go back now, the number of ex-players that are there. I mean, I think about that team from the 1970s, and a lot of them are regulars through the Former Players Association. But obviously, Pat Stanton is revered above all others. But you'll see the likes of Brownlee and Blackley and Tony Higgins and Ali McLeod and Jim MacArthur and so on. They're regulars at the game, and they've got that link, that affinity with the club. And interestingly, most of them weren't Hibs fans. Some of them were, but a lot of them have got that link with the club from having playing with it, and maybe in some kind of way, Hibs got under their skin. I mean, you can think of people like Jackie McNamara as another example, someone that was brought up a Celtic fan that very much became, I'm glad to say, one of us.
That's what I was thinking. I was at school with one of Jackie's sons, not the
Oh,
not the
were you?
famous son, one of the other ones. So I used to play rugby down in Musselburgh where he owned a pub. So
Aye,
I used
yeah,
to. So it was exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about the
yeah.
players like that. Um, it's interesting. Jimmy O'Rourke. A lot of people like in your era, I suppose, had him as their favourite player. He was playing
Oh,
at the same
aye,
time as
aye,
Pat
aye.
Stanton, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, look, I mean, I was young, and you're probably more taken by the forward going players, haven't you?
Mm.
And Jimmy was an exciting player. But with a lot of exciting players, I mean, Edwards, the way he could strike a ball, and I like Cropley, and Duncan was a great entertainer. Duncan always gave us a good laugh. Schadler is he's 100 mile an hour, all action stuff. But then you had the artisans like Stanton, like Brownlee, Blackley, who, my goodness, talk about a man that could read a game. Um, quite special, really. One player I did get to know, well, I saw in his second spell at Hibs, and I got to know him before he passed away, was Joe Baker. There's another one, absolutely devoted to Hibs, and what a player. Somebody that achieved so much. And obviously played for England while he was at Hibs as well. There's another quiz
Yeah.
question. The first player to play in Scotland to be capped for England, but
Father-in-law
there's
used to
so,
always tell me that one. My father-in-law was my father-in-law's favourite in the day, and he always used to say that about the playing for England and all that. Played in Italy as well, didn't he? Played with Dennis
he
Law
did.
over in.
He got sold by Hibs to Torino, so he was there when Dennis Law was there. But brought up in Lanark. Well, he was born in Liverpool, which is why in those days where you were born dictated where you played, who you played for. But he was brought up in Wishy. He was a Wishy boy, so no historic connection with Hibs. But just loved the Hibs from his time there. What a servant to the club. What an ambassador for the club he was.
I was thinking there when you said Joe McBride. I'm sure I read see on I read the message. I used to read the message boards more than I do now, but there were guys that, off that era. Was it Steen that McBride replaced, and they never quite. Is that the right order? I've got
I know
that.
Steen went to Rangers for 100,000, and the
Who
following
did
week he
McBride
signed McBride.
replace?
Yeah, so McBride had been a very, very successful centre forward, been at Motherwell, been at Celtic. He was the Celtic centre forward the year that they won the European Cup, but he got injured, so he didn't appear, and he kind of fell out of favour. But what a player!
Yeah.
What a player!
I'll maybe get mixed up with somebody else. My mind's going. There was somebody, he came in and replaced. They might have replaced Jimmy O'Rourke. Somebody came in and replaced O'Rourke, and
no,
this guy
no,
used to score loads of goals, but nobody, there was a lot of folk didn't
no, no.
quite
I
take to
think
him.
what you're thinking of, and I think it was more to do with that time I mentioned where basically Turnbull lost faith with the team when they lost the hijack split in the quarter final. So he broke the team up. So eventually O'Rourke and Gordon went, and Joe Harper was brought in from Everton.
I'm thinking,
And
yeah.
he wasn't. I think most people would kind of now say that when he signed for Hibs, he wasn't fit. He's a good player. I mean, Scotland centre forward, but because Hibs had seen that partnership broken up between O'Rourke and Gordon, a lot of fans were never going to take to him. I mean, he famously scored a hat trick for Hibs in a cup final against Celtic, the '75 League Cup final. Unfortunately, we lost 6-3. But then he went to Aberdeen, and of course he scored a barrel of goals for Aberdeen. But I don't know if he, it must have been difficult for him, and the fact that the Hibs fans didn't really take to him. And he is an Aberdeen legend. So
So I was thinking,
we had a few songs about him that we better not sing tonight, and I won't get into trouble.
I just remember reading about it, and I thought that's mad the many goals he scored just in black and white. If you just look at the numbers he scored.
I'll tell you what. There's some very grainy footage of the Hibs Liverpool game in 1975 where we won 1-0 at Easter Road, pouring down the rain. He scored an absolutely cracking goal. Brownlee unfortunately missed a penalty late on, and we would have won 2-0. And then we went down to Liverpool and lost 3-1. Edwards scored for us, but if Brownlee had scored that penalty, then we would have gone through in the away goals rule, and that was the year that Liverpool won the UEFA Cup.
Stories when you think how far away we are Like how all that company we used to mix in and the level we were
Oh,
at.
Jings, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that growing up in that time, you kind of expected Hibs to be in a European tournament most years, if not every year. And some of the nights we had were, quite phenomenal. We should have beaten Leeds. We're very unlucky to go in penalty against Leeds, for example, as well. But I mean, before my time, of course, we had the likes of Barcelona. I was there to see them beat Sporting Lisbon 6-1 at Easter Road. I wasn't at the Naples game where we put 5 past Dino's off in 1967. So some great nights. If there are any jambos, and I don't suspect you've got any jambos watching Colin, you can only dream of having such glory nights in Europe. You've never had them.
They do watch because they're above us in the league at the moment, right? So they do tune in.
I know.
It's when we're doing well again that they'll vanish.
I the league table's upside down. And the other thing to remember is that the Hertz will come down after Christmas when we take the Christmas decorations down. That's always the way it happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not that far away now.
Yeah.
What's what I'm thinking? Like that's all those great days, right?
Yeah.
What was it? What was it like? So I'm just thinking now, right? Like you can talk about players' longevity of players and that, right? But I don't think players get it because they're that good that we're selling them.
Yeah.
Or if they're not that good, we all just write them off and say we need a mass clear out. Right? They all need to go. So they're never here for long. What was it like going from that period you're talking about, competing with Liverpool, Leeds, Dina's off team, like Napoli and all that,
Yeah.
and then we hit the period we hit after that, when we'd been relegated and then the doldrums. What was it? What was it like? What was it? What was the?
Well, honestly, Colin, you used to shake your head in disbelief, and of course the crowds fell away badly. I mean, you had all the trouble that we talked about. So, I mean, you had this massive stadium, and the crowds declined. We went down to the first division, came back up, went through a number of managers. Ended up with Bertie Auld as manager for a long period of time. I went down south between 1984 and 1993, and I remember the last game of the season in the terrace at Easter Road. It was Hibs Rangers. I think it was a 0-0 draw, and I was with some of my pals, and they looked at me and said, "You're the lucky one. You're not having to come back next season."
Yeah.
And that was a bit, that was about the gist of it. I mean, the trouble is, we've had. I mean, I suppose thinking about the time we had in the 60s and 70s, and we've had some great periods since then. Let's not forget. I mean, under McLeish, under Mowbray, what we achieved under Stubbs, a wee flurry under Lennon, what's happening now. But the trouble is, there's been long periods of utter dross in between. But I mean, you're Hibs fans, but it's I think the expression I would use is "serve to bear," isn't it? When you see the ball getting lumped up the park, and sometimes players that you don't think are really fit enough to wear the jersey, but
it's funny.
You've got to celebrate the good times. Just celebrate the good times.
My younger brother, the reason that he became a Hibs fan was because he used to see me coming through the door like 2 a.m, steaming after being out after watching Hibs. I think it was in the Tony Mowbray era. And I remember writing something about it afterwards, after Hibs won the Scottish Cup, because he had come to the League Cup final against Ross County earlier that year. And he thought that was going to be his moment. And the way that I'd written about it was that there was, in my time supporting Hibs, there was a couple of little moments that you were able to pinpoint and say, that's why we continue to go. Like you have that dross in between, but you do have those highlights.
No, I know. And of course, the nightmare for me with that Ross County game, because Dingwall's in my constituency. It was my constituency team. And I remember.
Did you have to go for a press opportunity to celebrate their victory afterwards?
No. But I'll tell you what happened. I mean, I do remember. So the Sky-based paper, the West Highland Free Press, phoned me up and said, "I'll be wishing Ross County all the best." And I said, "Well, I'll quote the late great Laurie Riley, I'm born a Highby and I'll die a Highby." And of course, that became the back page headline. And when I was a politician, I was always very careful not to accept hospitality. I didn't do it. But I was asked to go into hospitality in the Ross County End, and I thought, well, geez, I'm the local MP. I've actually got a responsibility. What I did was I bought tickets for the Hibs end and gave them away, and I took that. So
you bridged the moral and ethical conundrum.
Well, I hope I did, but I mean, I did get a request from a quote from the Preston Journal after it, and I did as well as I could. But there was a BBC journalist came up with a microphone. I'll not say who it was, and I'll not say who it was, but they were politely told where to stick their microphone because no, I was not going to do that. But you know, you had the lows of all of that. It was a big disappointment, wasn't it, losing to Ross County that day. I have to confess, going along to Hampden a few months later for the cup final against Rangers, I had, maybe I was wrong, maybe because we've been there so often, I had so little in the way of expectation that afternoon. And there was almost a kind of, has that just happened? Have we really just done this?
It's funny actually because I have a theory that the Ross County loss played into how Hibs actually eventually won the Holy
Yeah.
Grail, because
Yeah.
I think people had become. I mean, obviously, like we've dealt with a lot of disappointments as Hibs fans, but
Yeah.
there have been like there was just something particularly hard to take
Yeah.
about that defeat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember at the Dundee United game, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this in the past, Ian, when you mentioned like some of the teams that you've watched and some of the players like leaving, for example, Colin Steen
Yeah.
to Rangers. But when Hibs took the field against Dundee United and Jason Cummings has missed his penalty, and we've got Conrad Logan in goal, who, you know, he became the hero basically of
Yeah.
the semi-final. But then you also had Henri Anier come on for Dundee
Yeah.
United, and
Yeah.
my mates
That's
and
right.
I, like, we
Yeah.
thought, and we say to one another, "This is how it happens. This is how
Yeah.
we get knocked
Yeah.
out. This is how it kind of lumps on
Yeah.
the disappointment again." But and it never did. And I think that
No.
the
No. It's
expectations were tempered enough that we went into the
yeah.
final
True.
and won
But
it.
I mean, listen, when I think back, you know, winning the cups in the 70s, 91, 2007, but the moments in doing these things though, and actually, I think, you know, when I think back to the Kilmarnock one, the 5-1 one, it's the only time that I've sat there knowing that Hibs has won the cup and just watching the atmosphere for honestly for the last half hour, thinking, you know, this is a bit special because there's none of the other games that we've been at. It's been that clear cut to the end. I mean, the 2-0 against Dunfermline in '91. I mean, it was a really poor first half, brilliant Hibs performance in the second half. A day I'll never forget. I was actually with one of my pals. I was one of the two disc jockeys for the Hibs party that night in what was the Dragonara Hotel. So that was a special night. But these are just magic moments, absolutely magic moments, and you treasure those. Um, just absolutely brilliant. I think when we lost to Celtic in 2001, and if you remember, we played really well for the first 20, 25 minutes. The problem was when Celtic scored, they got the first goal. That was that. But that was a good side. Okay, McLeish had fallen out with Latapi, but that was a really good.
He was injured as well, wasn't he? Was he injured, or I don't know
Uh,
if he never played, or if he was carrying an injury, he maybe
he was
went
maybe
off.
carrying. I think he was carrying an injury. He
I
did
think he
play.
was heavily strapped up,
He
maybe.
was.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah, but he did play. But obviously, we had the fallout with Latapi. And that was costly. And actually, just a few weeks before that, because I mean, I remember I'd been there, we'd gone to Parkhead and we got a one each draw. Celtic had played very well the first half. I remember Thompson scored. And in the second half, we were brilliant. And Libra had just signed for us, and Libra scored this absolutely smasher of a goal from the right hand side. So there was reasons to be optimistic going into that cup final. So I still think that was one that, again, it was a good Celtic side, lots of good Celtic players, but one that got away from us.
That's when all the 100-year stuff started. We won that. That was it. That was in '99 at that point, I think, weren't we? So
Yeah.
that was when it really ramped up the pressure after that.
I think it was 2001, Colin.
It was. I was on my stag do, and I came back on the Friday night, and I was straight up on the Saturday morning to go through up to the Penny Black for 8 a.m, 7 a.m, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful sunny day as well.
It was until about 4 o'clock or
yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, I suppose, on this season so far, and what do you hope for the rest of the season?
Well, I suppose if you think about everything that happened from last November, I mean, it was just brilliant, wasn't it? And so I suppose in some senses there was an air of expectation for this year and the whole significance of the 150th year and all the rest of it. So I suppose in some senses, Colin, it feels as if it's misfired a bit. And how do you put your finger on what has happened? I actually think the club has signed some really good players, and I think they're going to. I mean, Clegy, I think, is going to be good. Chewa, I mean, when you look at what's happened with Mulligan and McGrath, I mean, you can't doubt the quality of these players, but it's just not, for whatever reason, it's not worked to the extent that we think it probably should work. I think Salinger as a keeper is a decent keeper as well. So I hope, having had that good result last weekend against St Mirren, we can kick on. We're all desperate to see them being successful, to get back into, when you talked about what's aspirations for this year. We want to get back into Europe, don't we? And be nice to do something special in a cup. And the
10-year anniversary this year since
exactly, exactly. But no, it's a good side. I mean, Bowie needs a bit of help, doesn't he, up front? I mean, obviously the reasons why we didn't get another striker in the window, but it would be nice to see another striker coming in January just to take some of the load off. Perhaps a different type of striker to come in, take some of the weight off his shoulders as well. He's a smashing player, got a lot of natural attributes, but obviously he's struggled a wee bit over the course of the last few weeks.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think maybe the style of play has not been suiting him as well, to be honest. But
yeah.
Trying to just, I think I read.
I mentioned the youth players, but I didn't mention Hanley. My goodness, what an inspiration he's been playing in the back of Hibs.
Colin's a big fan of Grant Hanley.
Yeah, no,
I stood up for him. There was people trying to get on his case before he had signed.
Oh, I know. I remember.
Scotland Hall of Famer, 64, 65 caps, whatever it is, after last night, which we might not mention.
No, I lost sleep last night. But he's been an inspiration, and the way he's organised that defence has been absolutely phenomenal.
I was going to ask you, what do you think about David Gray? I think I've seen a question coming in. I'm just scanning.
I've got it on my notes to ask that
question. Have you got it there?
Yeah, it's Jay and Sandy asking, how highly do you rate SDG or David Gray, the manager?
I do. I don't know David. I mean, I've met him, but I don't know him. But I remember when he became the first team coach at the beginning of last season, listening to him, and I thought, here's a man that set his stall out about what he was doing, explained his coaching styles, his ways, and all the rest of it. And I was really impressed. And it was just like all of us were crestfallen when we saw the start that we had. And I'm glad, maybe for reasons that the club couldn't afford to do anything else, that we stuck by him. But the one thing that really strikes me is that the relationship he seems to have with the players. There seems to be a real bond there. So I mean, I hope he's here for a long time. I hope he goes on to great success in the game. I think there's something about David Gray. I really do. I mean, he's still a young man learning. I mean, he's obviously got the likes of Malky Mackay. I mean, I don't know who else he listens to from his previous coaches and all the rest of it. But no, I think he's done well for Hibs, and I hope he achieves success as Hibs coach.
That leads into another question that I would ask then, which is, what was it that David Gray said when you said that you're quite taken with him? Apologies if I'm misquoting you, which was maybe different from, say, Nick Montgomery, Lee Johnson, Jack Ross, and the managers that he's previously worked with, and the influences that he might have.
I don't know if you two remember, Hibs did a couple of quite long interviews when he was appointed coach that appeared on Hibs TV, and it was just the depth and structure and the way he came across. Come on, we're all Hibs fans. We want every Hibs manager to be successful, but some of the choices have been a bit questionable. And I don't know, Montgomery never struck me as a man that had a personality and lead people. I mean, what do we know? Because we don't see what they do day in, day out. But he never came across to me as a leader. I think Jack Ross was dealt with. I mean, Jack Ross's football didn't exactly appeal to all of us, did it? But I can't believe anything other than that Jack Ross was a good man, a capable man, and a good coach, a good manager. And the timing of getting rid of Jack Ross was just shocking ahead of that cup final against Celtic. And I mean, his record was pretty decent. So I think he was treated quite badly, actually.
I never regretted that. I think they've said that various times. That they maybe jumped too early on that one. But
Yeah.
But the fans were on side with it in the main as well. Though. That's the
I know.
thing, you know. It was,
Yeah, because the
so.
football. I mean, we've got. I don't know about you two, but for my generation, we've got an expectation of the type of football that Hibs are supposed to play, and in reality, they very rarely play it. But we want to see fast attacking football, don't we? We want Hibs to win, but we want to be entertained. And the best will in the world, that wasn't the way that Jack set out his team.
I think we've covered this to death. I think on various extra times or whatever, but
Yeah,
we were winning games, but we weren't
we're
there.
winning games. Yeah, yeah.
And because we weren't there, you never had that sort of affinity, maybe
Yeah,
as
there
much
was that.
affinity or
Yeah,
bond.
there was
You're
that
sitting
as
watching it
well.
on the couch, on your own
Yeah,
in the living room, sort of things.
yeah.
How much do you think David Gray is benefiting from the Gordon's decision to relieve Jack Ross of his duties in that troublesome second season that he had?
Yeah, Colin, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to answer that. But I think one of the things I would say about where the club is now. I mean, the club is going through a transition with the Gordons. They've learned, particularly Ian. But the club, from what I can tell, the club seems to be in a really good shape and really good hands on and off the park. And I'm sure the combination of all of these things and the structure, I think all of these things must help. I have to say, and I know there was obviously some controversy about Malky Mackay. I'll tell you what, I think we've got a really good man as Malky Mackay, leading player recruitment. I think he's done a phenomenal job there. So it seems that the club is on an even keel, and I'm sure that must help David and the coaching staff, knowing that the club has been well run on and off the park.
Fewer
Right.
fires to put out allows them to kind of
Yes.
concentrate on the matters at hand.
Yeah, indeed. And I think you can see with what they're doing with the player recruitment, it's not just about a short-term fix. They're thinking for the longer term. They're thinking about where they're taking this club as well. So, let's see where we get to over the course of the next few years. But we might be in for I hope we're in for a good ride that we can all enjoy. And there is that sense of togetherness. Not that long ago that wasn't there, was it? Between the fans and the club, and long may that continue.
Well, I don't know that I was going to ask. Oh, the club's in a good place, but obviously over the last week, 10 days, whatever it's been, the Black Knights we've rebought their shares, or they've sold their shares, whatever way around it was. I don't know who forced whose hand, but what do you make of all that? Like what the Black Knight partnership was meant to be, and then what's actually happened at the end of it?
Well, putting my business back on, Con, having a situation where you've got a majority shareholder and a minority shareholder, let's be charitable and polite. It's never easy, because you're always going to have people that want to do things in a certain way, and it's clear there wasn't a meeting of minds. So I hope that we've actually learned from their input. I'm sure we will have done, and the way that they do things will have benefited from that. But now we can go full steam ahead in the direction that we're going under the stewardship of the team that's there. So, but the point I made earlier, that once again, I mean, you think about the losses last year, the Gordons put their hands in their pocket, they put their hands in their pocket again. We should be getting, I would imagine we'll be getting the accounts for the year to end June quite soon. And I think we can all anticipate there's going to be another healthy loss, unfortunately. But the fact that the Gordons have stood behind us has been nothing short of remarkable, and I think we're due an enormous vote of thanks to them for what we've done. And let's hope that all of us pulling together, the club, the supporters behind the club, that we get to a sustainable base with a team that we can be proud of, that can compete at home, can compete in Europe as well, and it's not going to require them continuing to have to put their hands in their pockets, because frankly, that's not sustainable over the longer term.
Oh, absolutely. You are a man of means, Ian. So is there anybody that's got plenty of cash that could just drop some money at the Hibs?
Well, listen, I suppose the one thing about any owner, I mean, I've seen different owners of Hibs. I mean, I remember as a young boy, Tom Hart acquiring Hibs and so on. So nothing's ever forever, is it? I mean, owners move on. And it'd be good to see when it is the time for that we've got someone that's got the same kind of approach that they have, and they've got the best interests of the club at heart. Tom Hart did. Tom Hart was a phenomenal owner for Hibs back in the day.
I was more actually. I was being flippant, but I was almost thinking of the James Anderson at Hearts just chucking money in just because he's got too much yet. Is there anybody out there like for your finance days that you can tap on the shoulder?
You're,
Just
you're,
free
ta-
money,
you're,
but
ta-
what? Free money,
you're,
no input, nothing. That's what you get for it.
you're taking me into very, very dangerous territory, and I'm not sure I should say what I'll say now, but I know James. I know James quite well. And I did say to him once, what on earth got you involved in Hearts? Now, I don't know whether he said this in a jocular way, because I think there might have been two reasons, but he said to me, he said, do you not remember you took me to a Hibs Hearts game? I says, aye, but the idea wasn't for you to invest in Hearts.
They obviously won it again, the usual.
Actually, when he moved to Edinburgh, when he moved up to work for Bailey Gifford, his first flat was in Dorgie Road, and he's an amazing guy, and he's got a good sense of community and wanting to give back. It's just unfortunate he chose the wrong one.
You could do half and half, surely. Like, why? It's the whole of Edinburgh's. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
Doesn't he get all of them?
you remember in that COVID period, he actually gave a lot of money to Scottish
Yeah.
football. Every Scottish club benefited, and his wife is a benefactor at Glasgow City, as well. So they both take these responsibilities, social responsibilities to the community, quite importantly as well.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about Hibs, but no, I was going to ask you about Scotland. I know you're a Tartan Army, obviously, because we spoke
Yeah.
when this interview's been a couple of months in the making, and the last time
Yeah.
you were going to the Scotland game, weren't you? So
Yeah,
that's why we waited to this time.
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of things I've got on this week, and I can't believe it because it's such a massive game, I'm going to miss the one on Tuesday against Denmark. I've been to all the other home ones. I mean, I used to for years and years. Before I was a politician, I never used to miss a game home and away. So at least I'm back doing that as well. And I love watching Scotland as much as I watch loving Hibs. And we talked about Hibs winning cup finals and so on, and I've been lucky enough to see Hibs see Scotland at European tournaments. I was in France '98, the game against Brazil, the opening game. My goodness, John Collins scoring that penalty and Scotland drawn with Brazil at half time. That was quite an experience, and obviously I've seen Hibs in Scotland in the Euros as well. So these are great memories. And how wonderful would it be if we get a chance to go to the World Cup again next year?
Oh, and nearly was into the playoffs last night at one point, wasn't it? That what's the team? The team that Denmark drew with, they bailed us right out there.
Belarus, yeah.
Belarus, yeah.
It was as in the old days, I would have been in Greece last night, but watching it on the telly, it was a really hard watch last night. Really hard watch, and it's we've got some. We're not the finished article, but we've got some decent players just now. It really would be great if we can get through to the World Cup.
It is a funny one because we're doing, obviously this would be, we were in the Euros, we were in the Euros prior to, and if we can get to the World Cup, but yet even if we got to the World Cup, there would still be people calling on a change of manager.
No, I know.
Like,
well, that's football, isn't it? I mean, when I was growing up in the 70s and World Cup 74, 78, 82. I mean, it was taken 86, of course, as well. 90. It was kind of taken for granted that Scotland would qualify for the World Cups. And when you talk about the teams that Hibs had back then, but the Scotland teams, 74 in particular, that's one that maybe should have done better. 78, when all the Ali McLeod stuff and that famous line from Ali McLeod, what's going to be the most difficult thing about winning the World Cup? Retaining it. It was, but I mean, some great players, but we never played as a team. We kind of underachieved. But when you think back, the Joe Jordans, the Lornamers, the Dalglishes, the Bremners, I mean, you could go through so many of them. Just some brilliant players that played for Scotland.
it is, and then it's mad that we've never got a group stage. But when you look at, I've watched some of those programs, on BBC Scotland when they put them out, and that 86 is the first one I remember, right? As a wee boy, but the previous to that, you look at the squads and you go, how did we not get?
I know.
Group?
And then whether I'm saying to you, I used to go to a lot of the Scotland away games, and a pal of mine once described going to see Scotland as 3 days of enjoying yourself and 90 minutes of misery somewhere in the middle, and that was about true. And I remember being in Amsterdam and we'd lost 3-0, coming back into the centre of town, and the Scotland fans are doing what they would do. They were just going to carry on partying. And Dutch guy said to me, "Why are you still singing? You've just lost 3-0. I said, "Well, I'll give you the answer." I said, "You were only as half as good as you were last time when we lost 6-0.
Yeah. Well, it's a massive game on Tuesday now, isn't it? So
Oh, it's huge.
Hopefully we can do it.
Um, it would be unbelievable. And, the fact that those of us of a certain age can remember being in the World Cup, but I mean, those born in the last 30 years have never seen it. Not in their memory anyway. So to be able to experience that would be fantastic.
This is as good a Scotland team, I think, as we've had for quite a while. Do you think this is our best chance at automatic World Cup qualification? Or do you think we also have talent coming through that will help us in the next campaign as well? Or in the campaigns to come?
I don't know if we're developing enough young players the way that we need to, John. And I mean, that takes you back onto another issue, I suppose, and that is the development of young players through the leagues. You can start to ask questions about, should we extend the league in Scotland to create more opportunities, I believe, for young people to come through, but we're just not developing young people the way that we should be, John. I don't really see it. I mean, we've obviously got the likes of Doak coming through just now. We've got Bowie, our own Bowie as well, but it's not as if there's a lot of young people to come through. Lennon, of course, is another one, but there's not really the depth that we need. We're struggling for a goalkeeper at the moment. We're going to need new centre halves. Be nice to have another winger as well, wouldn't it? So I don't know. We need more. We've got some really good players. We've got some good midfield players. Obviously, Robertson's going to come into the end of his tenure, but I hope we can qualify, and I hope we can do well when we get to the World Cup. And we need to think about what do we need to do to get the game right, that we're developing young players to the extent that we need to be doing. In all honesty, when you look at the games in this World Cup qualification, technically there's teams that have been better than us in our group.
It's something really, although the beat us last night, but the even a Hampden game struggled, against them.
Oh, jeez. I mean, I was there, freezing cold night, and it was hard to watch, really hard to watch. But we've got to be better technically than we are.
I think we've got to take our chance on Tuesday, because I really think, I don't know what's coming through. I mean, I think even if we come back to Hibs, I don't think we get enough players through our own academy.
No, we're not.
And you're the first team. And then, Ian, the rule, I mean, without getting political on it, because of the Brexit and all that, it's cheaper for the English teams to come up and buy our players when they're 15, 16 for 100 grand, and we just take it. Then they get lost down there in the middle of
that's exactly what's happened, and obviously Hibs have suffered from that over the last couple of years, and then they're not breaking through, so they've been lost in the system. No, you're absolutely right.
I think that's us over now. Thanks, Ian. Thanks very much again.
Well, I do
John,
have
you got
one final question, if it's okay. So there's a Rodney Farmer on YouTube. He said that he would like to ask Ian if there are any other politicians, I'm going to say opponents or colleagues of a Hibs persuasion that we might not know about.
Oh, Jings. Well, Keith Brown, Minister in the Scottish Parliament, is a big Hibs fan. Ben McPherson's a Hibs fan as well. On the current MP side in Westminster, there's none that I'm particularly aware of. No, there's one or two that unfortunately are on the other side. The ex-Secretary of State for Scotland, Ian Murray, is a big jambo, so you could imagine we used to have a lot of banter down there. When I was there, funnily enough, there was quite a lot of Dundee United fans that were in Parliament. I don't know what that was all about. Actually, I do. One of the funny things I remember when the SNP group were elected in 2015, the 56 of us, and the DUP used to sit behind us, so you can imagine some of them had a favouritism towards a certain part of Glasgow. And I know it got passed round that any of you want to join the House of Commons Rangers Supporters Club. I'm glad to say there wasn't one. So that was a position of joy.
Some pleasure to that. No, well, anyway, thanks again. Just for the listeners, we will be back tomorrow. I think we're doing a bit of Matthew's wanted to do some kind of extended chat about nights. We'll see. I don't know know how much chat I've done it. But well, that's the plan for the extra time tomorrow night. Might be longer than 30 minutes, depends how much I say. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you